It's Monday Modern Madness, an open tag by 865 Knives. And today I have another Demko for you. This is another AD25. I showed you this one last Monday, and today we're going to take a look at this. This one is in 20 CV with Ultim scales, and this is from Blade HQ. I have since put a titanium pocket clip on it for deep carry versus the clip that it comes with, which is not really a deep carry clip. And in a shorter knife like this, in the small knife, I do really like the deep carry. If it wasn't such a small knife, because these are, let's see here, blade length is 3 1/8 inches. So if it wasn't such a small knife, it was 3 1/2 inches or more, a little bit like this is nice because it gives you something to grab a hold of to pull it out of your pocket. So anyway, let's take a look. This one is 20 CV with Ultim scales. Spear point, it's ground pretty decent behind the edge. It's not super thin or anything, but it's a good working knife. It's a good utility knife. Now this is the same knife. If you hold them up, you can see everything. The dimensions are exactly the same. The difference is this one is in OD green G10. Still has the factory pocket clip. But this one is a Tanto in 3V steel. Now, I kind of question the choice of 3V steel in a pocket knife. 3V is great in a fixed blade knife that's going to see abuse. It's a very high toughness steel, but it does not have the same edge retention as our other modern steels. I think the ideal choice in a knife like this would be crew wear. So what type of abuse are you going to submit a small pocket knife to that requires 3V? Crew wear is going to be my top choice in a blade steel for a pocket knife like this. It's very tough. It's almost as tough as 3V. It's probably 90% of the toughness, but it can be heat treated hard, and you're looking at double the edge retention if it's heat treated properly. And in my opinion, it's also easier to sharpen than 3V. Not so much easier, but it takes less time, and it is really, really good with the toothy edge, which I prefer. If I could only have one knife steel out of everything that's available today for both folders and fixed blades, it would be crew wear. I think crew wear is the ideal steel for a fixed blade. You will have some other steels that will hold an edge longer than crew wear. 20 CV, MagnaCut run hard, like around 63, 64 HRC. S90V. S90V is still one of my favorite steels for a folder. It's not tough enough to be put in the fixed blade, but in the folder, it is really good. It holds an edge for an insane amount of time. A working edge. It will lose that hair-popping, super, super sharp edge a little bit quicker, but then that working edge, that toothy edge, because of the coarse carbides that are in the steel, lasts an insane amount of time. It's probably my number one choice for a folding knife. But like I said, if I could only have one steel for both, crew wear has the best attributes of everything. So let's take a little closer look at this knife. You can see it's got a hollow grind here and then a flat grind out here. Cold Steel does them the same way, and so do a lot of other companies. That gives you a slicier grind down here and a little tougher grind that'll take more abuse out on the tip, where it has a little bit more metal, because a hollow grind, there's less metal down in this area, where the flat grind here stays thicker. So the tip will take more abuse. So you can use a tip for rough use, and then you still have the fine cutting edge for doing slicing. Now this one has thumb studs on it. This one does not. They're towards the back of the cutting edge, and you can sharpen this knife without removing the thumb studs. These knives also have a good choil, which will aid in sharpening. I still might take these off and leave them off, is I prefer the deployment hole. It's even better for a Spidey flick. And even though you can thumb roll with the stud, you can thumb roll just fine from the deployment hole. you don't need these thumb studs, and they will get in the way a little bit for sharpening. Like I said, you can sharpen it without it, but I would prefer not to have these. The fit and finish on these knives is good. The quality of the G10 is excellent. It has a really nice grip to it. It's got a good texture. I'll probably end up sanding the area underneath the pocket clip down just a little bit to make it easier on the pants. These knives run on bearings, and they're very smooth. The shark lock is just fun to play with. Let's see if we could do this lefty. I love the sound of these knives. They have a very gun-like sound, which I said in the last video. And I'll just rotate back and forth. I've carried this one now for several weeks, and it has been excellent. I have not had to touch the blade up at all. It's still running the factory edge, which is pretty even, and it came really sharp, and it has remained sharp. And one thing that's a little bit odd, these knives look like the top here is bent a little bit. On the bottom here, this is raised up a little, and on the top, it's lowered a little bit. And if you look in the pictures of all these other knives online, they're the exact same way. But at a first glance, it does look like this top bar that goes over is bent down a little. It's not. That's the way they are. I think they do that to provide a little better place for your thumb to rest. This one in 3V, they didn't do it to this one. But you do have the thumb stud. And as you can see for this one, the slot is longer and it encompasses the area where the thumb stud is. I think that would be a nice mod for this knife. Remove the thumb stud and lengthen this slot to include that area. That is probably going to be a future mod on this knife. I'm going to start carrying this one now, and I'll give a report on this in a couple of weeks. But so far, my carrying of this one, I have been very pleased with. It's an excellent knife, and I can't wait to test this one out and see how their 3V holds an edge. Let's take a few measurements. The handle overall is about 4 1/4. Your blade length is 3 1/8, and your cutting edge about 3 inches. Now, one thing that's of a little bit of concern to me is the inner grip. If you look, the inner grip here is only, let me put it underneath and make it easier to read. The inner grip is about 3 1/2 inches. That's just a little bit short. See, it's a little more. So when I go to grab one of these knives, my pinky hangs over about flush with the edge. It doesn't go inside of the grip like it's supposed to. But that's one thing, the addition of this deep carry pocket clip, it lets your hand ride a little higher, a little farther away from the scale, and your pinky wants to more naturally go right over this end. And it's actually a pretty comfortable grip. I don't mind that at all. Now on this one, my pinky is still there, but I can feel it wanting to squeeze my hand a little. And if I actually really try and I squash my hand, I can get it to fit in between there. It's a little bit uncomfortable being squashed like that, but not too bad. But the natural grip brings it flush with the end of the knife. So I wish they would have brought this choil forward just a little bit more. I mean, even 1/8 of an inch would help, just to make that inner grip just a little bit bigger. But they are a small knife, or at least if they didn't make the inner grip bigger, have this come a little flatter out here, which you can't really mod that yourself. You can see there's a barrel spacer right there, but the liners are recessed into the scales. If the liners were not recessed into the scales, I would probably grind some of this down. But you would definitely ruin the appearance of this knife if you tried to mess with that. So I'm not going to. Yeah, I think you can see in there, you can see how that's all recessed. Overall, excellent knives. I can highly recommend these. Now, if you have bigger hands than mine, so if your hand is more than 3 3/4 inches wide, you probably want to pass on these knives. I'd say they're ideally meant for somebody whose hand is about 3 1/2 inches wide. That's it for this one. We'll see you next time.